Smooch and the Dog Show. Another
notes.
episode is coming up tonight.
Dog Show. It's the Dog Show. It's the Dog Show. It's the Dog Show.
You're listening to the one and only Dog Show. Your hosts, Troop Brenson and Smooch Moncrief.
Just two dudes talking Georgia football.
Welcome, dog fans, to the one and only Dog Show. We're Troop and Smooch and Smooch. A little extra energy, a little extra pep to our steps this week. A little swagger back into Dog Nation as Georgia with a resounding 31-17 victory in Athens against the Volunteers. That makes 8 in a row, I do believe, against Tennessee. And I think they've scored maybe, 3 touchdowns in the power, 4 touchdowns in the past 31 possessions, past 3 games against Georgia. Georgia needed that game, just like they needed the Texas one. They needed that game Saturday night.
Right. At one point, we were willing to say, will the real Georgia please stand up? You know, which one is it? Is it Texas, Georgia, or all the other Georgia? And both times they've needed to answer the bell. They stood up. And in both games, Troop, in Texas and in Tennessee, they looked like the best team in the country. Both those times. The Alabama game is an outlier there. The first half of the Alabama game. But I think you said it absolutely perfect. We needed a game to get the swagger back that Georgia has. And that game gave it back. And it was what we had just talked about when we had Coach on. It was that first satisfying win from beginning to end. Just exactly what you wanted to see.
Yeah, and so many different aspects, and aspects that we were right to question, whether it be Carson Beck's performance or the offensive line's help and performance or the play calling, or the defense's ability to execute and play to their potential. You saw all of that in different parts of the game, and you saw what Georgia does, and we saw it last year in Knoxville, where Georgia gives up a few points to start the game and then just totally takes over and just chops them down bit by bit, and that's really what happened. Georgia outscored them in the second half. It was 17-17 at the half, and Georgia just does what they do. They are better in the second half, better in the fourth quarter, and they proved it. And a home game always helps. In the SEC, it's going to help. And Athens showed everybody around the country what it looks like, what a primetime game is supposed to look like. And I was so pleased with that. And it was really the second time this year that Georgia showed you what they could do. And even more in this game, because they made some mistakes in Texas and still just overcame them.
Right.
But they showed you against Tennessee, against a quality team, really good defense and an offense that is multidimensional. They can throw it. They can complete passes. They're dangerous in the air. And their running game's really, really good, and they don't give up on it. But it showed you what Georgia can do against a team like that when they are properly coached, motivated, or prepared, and take it seriously. I don't have answers for why they don't always play that way, but you want to be playing that way at this time in the season.
Oh, good point. Yeah. And Troop, it was we have lamented so much how Georgia really hasn't had a lot of home games this year, up to this point in the season. It's really because we've had some neutral site as well. It's bothered us that Georgia, we see other teams that seemingly play in the prime spots regularly, and Georgia really hasn't. And then they made the crowd in Athens wait too long to get a primetime game in a huge situation. And it could not have been a more perfect storm for the fans and the atmosphere in Sanford Stadium on Saturday night.
I'm going to preface tonight's show. And again, if you're just listening to us on audio or any podcast, you can always find us on YouTube as well at the Dog Show Pod and see all the visuals and the little things we put in there and video. But we're going to talk more about this game, look at some stats and some snap counts and our takes on some of the key moments of the game.
Yeah.
And then we're going to talk about the playoff committee, the seedings that did come out tonight. And we got some opinions on that and what a Dog Show top 12 would look like before we wrap the show up Yeah, before we wrap the show up with Tennessee Delusion, and you knew it was coming, and they have given us all the material we need this past week.
You know, I absolutely love that we've been around long enough where people are sending us delusional things. They're like, "Here, oh, this will be great on your DFA. You're doing one this week." We're like, you can't play Tennessee without Delusion. And so, to your point earlier that you just made, if you're listening to us, you want to watch this podcast. We've got so much good video, so much good B-roll, and so many good social media screenshots from the absolute insanity of the last week. So definitely check us out on YouTube this week if you get the chance.
Yep. So the offensive line did their job. Oh my goodness. They play a great game against a very stout Tennessee defense who can give you a lot of problems. They are good on all three levels.
Yes, they are.
But Carson Beck performed behind that line magnificently, 25 for 40. And he didn't start that way. At one point, he was 5 for 13. What about 3 drops? Mm-hmm. But he was 5 for 13. He finished 25 for 40 for 347. And that was just under 9 yards per attempt with 2 touchdowns, no picks, no sacks. That's big. Mm-hmm. And he also had some big runs, Smooch. 3 carries for 32 yards and a touchdown, the longest being 14 yards for Carson Beck.
Yeah, absolutely. It was the game that Carson Beck became, I don't know, there's games and there's even moments, Troop, where a player says, this is my team. That was the feeling. I know we'll jump into the game a little deeper in a second, but I just want to say, Troop, that run Carson Beck had, you talked about how he started. What'd you say, 3 for 13? Is that what he?
5 for 13.
Started 5 for 13, and somewhere in there, he breaks a tackle in the backfield and takes off for a first down run and absolutely lays a truck stick on a Tennessee defender. And it changed that game. It changed Carson. It changed everything. If the Dawgs go on to bigger and better things this season, they're going to look back at that one play and said that was the moment that the swagger returned, just as you said so perfectly and succinctly earlier.
Yes. Not a ton of running room. Georgia did have Frazier was the main ball carrier, 19 carries for 68 yards and a touchdown. The longest was 16 yards, and 68 was his total, like I said. And Carson Beck was the second leading rusher. Cash Jones didn't get any because he was dinged up. Dylan Bell got in there. He got injured. Mm-hmm. And I did hear good news on Bell, as they think he may just miss one game. And he could be back for the Georgia Tech game. But what you did see was with the injuries at wide receiver, and you're missing so many guys, is that Georgia, whether it was in the game plan, I kind of think it was, but because they knew they were going to have to use Bell at the running back position too, and or at least running the ball at a wide receiver position, you saw those tight ends really become a focal point. All 3 of them played huge factor in this game Saturday night. Love to see it.
Yeah, the numbers for the tight ends were absolutely outstanding. Troop, I thought they blocked well. Their assignments, not having to take them off the field to have offensive firepower. That's how Georgia works, when they can either block or get out in the pass pattern, and having them on, especially Delp, welcome to the starter role. I remember before the season, I said I thought Lawson Lucky may become tight end 1 over Delp. And he still may at some point, but it sure didn't look like that the other night. Delp was the man at tight end when he needed to be. 2 touchdowns.
Yep, 130 yards total for those
for
three.
The 3 tight ends.
Yeah, so very, very good. And like you said, they played an all-around game. Let's look at the overall stats of these 2 teams in this game. And total yards for Tennessee, 319. Georgia had 453. And then the passing yards, Nico does what he's been doing. They don't ask him to do a ton in his first year as a starter. He threw for 167 yards. Mm-hmm. Georgia threw for 347. They did run the ball pretty well, 152 yards to Georgia's 106. Georgia out first down the Volunteers 25-20. Only 1 turnover, and that was at the last play of the game, wasn't it? The last play where Georgia forced a turnover.
Yeah, the strip sack. Yeah, at the very end.
Yep. And Georgia barely won the time of possession by just a minute, 30.5 minutes to 29.5. I want to look at Nico's stats real quick when we're talking about that.
I wanted to say some things about Nico too, so let's do it.
Yep. So he did throw the ball 33 times, but his average was just at 5.1. And we had heard that he didn't, he looks like a guy who's throws a beautiful ball with a lot of arm strength, but that hasn't equated consistently into big numbers passing wise. So 20 of 33 for 167 and count them, 5 sacks. That'll change your timing mechanism and when you want to get the ball out.
Yeah. And, oddly enough, he doesn't have this is one of the things that surprised me. He doesn't have great escapability for a plus athlete. He's a fabulous athlete. He made some beautiful scrambles. But it seems to me usually once they get him in their grasp, he's going down. He's not a guy that steps out of a lot of tackles or stands there and takes the hit while he delivers a great ball. He's either running or he's passing. But that being said, he made a couple of great runs. He's an incredibly fluid athlete for a guy his size. Here's what I wanted to say about Nico. And don't take this the wrong way, Tennessee fans. I mean this as a compliment because we expect hugely great things out of Nico. He looks like someone you've given the keys to a sports car to that doesn't know how to drive a stick shift yet. That's kind of exactly what it is. You've given him a Maserati. He doesn't know how to shift the gears. That's kind of how it looks. You can see the talent. It just doesn't, as you said, it doesn't translate at this point. And Georgia brought the sacks. Having Smael Monodon back on the field, Troop Brinson, just a difference maker.
You didn't know what you were missing from him, but man, he and C.J. Allen were coming up the middle repeatedly. They were coming. That's the quickest way to get there. If they don't pick him up, and they left them open several times to run right through there and to flush him. And so Georgia was committed to coming. And you expect when you do that, you'll leave something across the middle, but it really never burned Georgia, maybe other than maybe once or maybe twice, but nothing for anything big at all. But you talked about some of the key moments, and I agree. And when Georgia hadn't scored yet, they were down 10-0. And you're like, okay, well, God, it's time to get going. And then Beck had that key run to pick up a first down and delivered a hit at the end.
Right.
And after that, it's like it kind of shook whatever mental block he had, or as a team too.
Right.
Things look different because 2 plays later, he threw an absolute laser over the defense to hit Delp in stride. Perfect pass. It was reminiscent, a little bit different, but reminiscent of him hitting what's his name? Rosamie Jack Saint. Right under the goalpost last year. Was it last year?
No, that was Stetson hit. Stetson threw
Stetson did that? Yeah. That was Stetson pass? Okay, it was very reminiscent of that because it was just on time and beautiful and just a laser beam. And that sparked Georgia. They scored another touchdown the next possession, took a 14-10 lead. And Tennessee did come back and score a touch. But then after that, Georgia kicked that field goal to end the half, and it was all Georgia in the second half.
Once they got them into deep water, as we say all the time, I knew when Georgia had closed the gap by halftime. I felt, this as Dawgs fans, we feel really confident when we're tied or the score's close at halftime because we know we've got the guys that can go 4 quarters. After that hit, he throws that pass to Delp. It was just a few possessions later, he hit Delp again. And we haven't seen – who was the last tight end that caught 2 touchdown passes in one game? There's only one other guy that's done it in a while, right? And to see Delp do that, and you could see, Troop, there was this magical moment after the game where his position coach, Hartley, comes up to him, and you can see it right there. You can see he's felt the weight of – coming off the bench for Brock Bowers, and you could see so much let off him, how proud his coach was of him, and he stepped up. Like you said, the team played different. That's a pass because of how hard it's thrown and how tight the coverage is that could have been dropped, and then it would have just been another down, right? He doesn't. Carson makes a confident NFL top 3 draft pick throw, and Delp reaches up, catches it confidently, gets both feet down, actually. So he makes an NFL catch, if you will. But I think that really set the tone.
It did. And if you pull up Coach Hayes, he's got some breakdown of that second touchdown I wanted to talk about quickly. And that was with Delp as well. But they had convinced Tennessee that they were going to do a little toss sweep, or I guess a little toss running play to the right. And they bid on it, and they just snuck Delp right through the traffic, wide open, going the opposite direction. So that was a beautiful play call. It worked. It looks great when it all works, and the players bite like that, and they sure did. They were going to stop Frazier in the backfield. That's what they were looking at. They were keying on that. They've obviously seen it on tape, and that's what they were looking for.
Yeah, Coach Hayes, I believe his term was, Bobo was in his bag, for this game and those play calls. When you and I on our thread, and then you and I just between the two of us were texting, I had some concerns about the aggressive nature that Tennessee plays on defense and how that was going to, we don't seem to have. We weren't handling people that played aggressive very well at the moment. And so I was kind of worried about it. But what you saw with Bobo is he took Tennessee's over aggression, and used it to hang them, made a noose out of their aggression.
And something you saw before we talk about the snap counts, it'll prove one of the points, is that people, when you don't execute, your offensive line doesn't execute, quarterback and receivers don't execute, somebody's taking a turn making a mistake on nearly every other play, it looks like you don't have any options. It looks like nobody's open. But when it's working right, you saw how many receivers and tight ends were open against a very, very good defense. They were people open, but he had time. The timing was right, and they were blocked correctly. And Beck, instead of flushing out of the pocket when he got pressure, stepped up in the pocket and kept his eyes downfield. That's what we've been needing to see. And so all those guys played a better game. And I hope they can carry it going forward. I don't know why they couldn't. But when I say that, let's look real quick at some of the I want to talk about the snap counts. And the offensive line is where I want to start with. They just played 5 players. No mixing and matching, no bringing people in and subbing them. They played 5 offensive linemen. And the biggest switch was Ernest Green didn't play at all. Now, he's got some injuries. A shoulder injury, I heard, is the biggest problem, but I also heard groin. But Monroe Freeling got in there and got 76 snaps at left tackle, and you didn't even know he was there because there was nobody getting by him and making big plays. No. And the other big part was Tate Ratledge played the whole game and played a terrific game at right guard. He was better, and I guess he got a little healthier and didn't make any mistakes. They looked really good on offensive line.
Yeah, when you fixing the left tackle seemed to set everything else into motion. And, when it comes to Ratledge, you give a guy a benefit of the doubt. Okay, we're really going to say he was sick and had a high fever, so he had a bad game and he's a little dinged up. Well, we can say it now because he proved it this week what he can do when he's healthy against a fabulous front 7 from Tennessee. And the boys just shut it down. Carson looked like he was playing 7-on-7 at some points in the game.
Yeah, we saw him make throws like that last year, some of the passes he made, but we hadn't seen it consistently this year. And give credit again to that offensive line for giving him time. Beck with 76 snaps, Nate Frazier with 44 snaps, Cash Jones with 22 snaps. Chauncey Bowens got in there out of necessity with 10 snaps, had a couple of first down pickups as well.
Yep.
Chaz Chambliss was a fullback and blocked for Nate Frazier's touchdown. We like to see that in the I formation under center. I was like, look at this. I saw him line up in the eyes. Here we go.
Love it.
Wide receiver Arian Smith was up and down in this game. He had a couple of drops, but he had a couple of decent catches too. London, he had 55 snaps.
He had a fabulous block, by the way, on a
Dominic Lovett,
on a Dominic Lovett little screen pass. That was maybe my favorite play of Arian Smith's. He just sustained his block all the way down for 10 yards.
Without holding. Yeah, it was a good shot.
Without holding, yeah.
Yeah. London Humphreys with 46 snaps, Dominic Lovett with 34. Then a drop off. Dylan Bell got hurt midway in the second quarter. Anthony Evans got in and got 16 snaps. And you saw Nitro Tuggle get 8 snaps, and he was targeted 3 times out of those 8 snaps. And you saw the comparison that I heard was A.D. Mitchell, just the fluidity and the way his body is shaped and the way he's built. A.D. Mitchell he looked a little bit like –
He did. He tracked the ball really well. He looked very comfortable out there. And, I hope we see a lot more of him. Him and Sokovia. I can handle some more of both of them.
Heck yeah. And then the tight ends, Urosic, 42 snaps. Lucky, 41 snaps. Oscar Depp, 40 snaps. So they all
that was carefully orchestrated. Yeah.
Yes, man.
Urosic silenced a bunch of critics, me being one of them. So I will not be anti-Urosic until the playoffs. So
at linebacker, the player that's losing some snaps is Raylan Wilson. He's still got 21 snaps and he's doing his thing, but somebody's going to lose some snaps when Smael Monodon came back. and he played a terrific game. They really needed him to play that game too. So he had 52 snaps and reminded all Georgia fans why he is probably one of the biggest leaders on that team, and he does it by action. Specifically, C.J. Allen with also 51 snaps, Jalen Walker with 34, Raylan with 21, and Chris Cole got in there with 10. Also, Cole picked up that last fumble to end the ball game.
Yeah, that was his first turnover.
Yep. And in defensive back, we did have still a change into the guard. Maybe not changing the guard, but Georgia's staff selecting who they want going forward, it looks like, as Dalen Everett was the leader with 74 snaps, Malachi Starks with 74, Dan Jackson with 73, KJ Bolden with 71. And then you got Dan Harris with 67. He only gave up 6 snaps to Julian Humphrey. And one of those snaps was a pass interference call, I believe.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Daniel Harris looks to have won that job.
Yeah. We've wondered who was going to step in. There's times where Humphrey looks good maybe in run protection, something like that. But man, just a boneheaded play on a lob ball in the first quarter, never to turn your head around, bulldoze the player over easy. And they took him right to the sideline at that point. And Daniel Harris came in and had a game that a shutdown corner has, playing those fast receivers from Tennessee. He actually looked really, really good, very comfortable. And like you said, it does appear that it's Dalen and Harris from here on out, at least in those first 2 positions.
So Georgia wraps up their SEC schedule 6-2, and they got through the gauntlet just about as good as you could. They lost a couple road games. We also always knew that was going to be the possibility. And move on, play UMass this weekend, and then Georgia Tech on Black Friday, a night game in Athens in a couple weeks. Going to be excited to watch that right after we get through with all the Thanksgiving stuff. That'll be something to look forward to.
Absolutely.
That Friday night. And that game is going to be an important game. They beat Miami, and Georgia Tech's they have a fighter's chance in this game. It's not something you're just going to walk in there and roll over them this year, I think.
No.
But it's an important game because of what we're going to talk about next, and that's the playoff seedings. And we're talking about these. Every game is going to count. There's other teams that are still playing important games, including this weekend when you got Indiana and Ohio State. But that game against Georgia Tech is going to be one where Georgia puts a whipping on Tech, and then it may push them up a spot or two. It may even mean a home game possible because you got to finish in that 5-8 seeding to get a home game. You finish 9-12, you'll be on the road for the opening playoff series or game. And so, yeah, look forward to that. But let's move it on, Smooch, and talk about the playoff seedings, which came out today.
What do you think you showed the committee tonight?
Well, I don't know, because I don't know what they look for. I really don't know what they look for anymore. So I would welcome anybody in that committee to come down to this league and play in this environment. So it's a tough place to play.
Yeah.
And for you folks listening, we'll, of course, just read them right off. The first team out, unfortunately, is Tennessee. They went right back where Georgia was last week. They're the first team out. They've got an opportunity if they win out with some teams falling. There will be some teams losing. It just depends on how far they fall to get back in there. And I think they deserve to be in the playoffs. Tennessee's got a really
absolutely.
Overall, they got their best team in the last few years. They don't have maybe the quarterback who's seasoned enough right now, but they have as a complete team one of their best squads.
Yeah, their fans don't deserve to be in the playoff, but the team certainly deserves to be in the playoff.
Yep, and so they're 11th, and then right ahead of them on the seedings, of course, would be BYU, Boise State, and then they got Georgia moved up to number 10, and right behind Ole Miss at 9, Miami at 8, Alabama at 7, Notre Dame at 6, Indiana at 5. Here's the comedy portion of the show. They should have let us know that the comedy portion of the show was going to start right past Alabama.
Oh my gosh!
With Notre Dame, Indiana, and Penn State.
Isn't that
right in there? Let's just take this little snippet and put them right there. We'll all have a good laugh, and then we'll laugh again once they play real teams in the playoffs. And,
oh my gosh! I would rather play all 3 of those teams than to play Kentucky. 100% dead serious.
Texas is number 3, Ohio State's number 2, and Oregon's number 1. And the way they got it set up, and you can look at it right here on your screen, that Georgia, if it ended right now, Georgia on the road against Penn State, which is probably not going to happen, but I would take that. And the winner would go to play in the winner would play Miami, which I would take that. That would even be a more entertaining game that Georgia would put a Florida State reality check on them, I do believe.
Yeah, they may score 100 in those 2 games.
But, yeah, and I don't know. You guys can look at this, and we're going to do our own. It's more what I came up with and sent it to Smooch and said, after just watching tonight, and I was like, you know what? Come on. Don't try to sell me on this. When we, as football fans, we watch football, and we know who the players are. We know what the strength of schedule is. We know what a team looks like, a team that's a dangerous team, what they look like. We've seen the results during this season. We know every team has ups and downs, even the best teams. We've seen them have some bad games. But then the overall picture, you can tell the strength of a team and how dangerous they are, or how many holes they have, or how many holes they don't have many. I'm still having a lot of problem. I guess Indiana's undefeated, but
that's pathetic.
But there's already any other undefeated teams. I mean, it's like they're
just Oregon.
Yeah, I mean, it's just not on the same level. They've beaten the worst teams of the Big Ten.
They don't even play teams with winning records. It's an absolute joke, and you're going to make a mockery of yourself if you're the playoff committee if you don't fix this. This team does not even only deserve to be not in the playoff. I'm not convinced they deserve to be in the top 25. It's that pathetic of a resume.
Yeah, and they should, if Ohio State handles business this Saturday. Drop right on out of there. They probably will stay in because Tennessee needs them to drop on out.
Yeah.
Because Tennessee's a better team than Indiana. Come on. They would be
Tennessee would smoke Indiana. It'd be over in the first half.
And if that's what you're trying to do, if you're trying to put the best teams in there, come on. Tennessee beat Alabama. Right. Indiana, what are you hanging your hat on? Just not playing enough good teams? What are you hanging your hat on? There's nothing.
And I am dead serious about what I'm about to say. I would have Vanderbilt in over Indiana. I mean, if it comes down to who would win on a neutral field, Vanderbilt would throttle Indiana. I mean, that's the level of insanity that this is. And of course, Notre Dame's going to be in there because Rudy played there. I mean, so you've got to have them.
I mean, Notre Dame, they really haven't done anything to get anybody excited either.
The worst loss of the season, right? That's their loss was worse than any other ranked team.
The worst loss of the season. They lost at home to a 3-9 NIU team. Mm-hmm. And now all they got to do is beat Army's undefeated, so that'll count as a quality win, I guess. But folks, how many championships is Army competing for?
Right.
Okay, it's some of the same stuff. It's a good story, but it's not what we're trying to do here. Hopefully it all sorts itself out. But when you set it up this way and you've got them ranked here, it's really hard to move these guys out of there in a reasonable fashion.
Right.
Other than just to say, we was just kidding. No, we got you. We got you. But so I made my own list of top 12 teams. We'll tag it as the Dawgs Show top 12. And it incorporates results, of course, on what we've seen on the field. It incorporates strength of schedule, as well as just the eyeball test of how they're playing right now and how we do all those things. Some of those things where I think the strongest teams, the top 12 strongest teams who would compete the best for a championship, and that's what
actually makes some entertaining football. Yeah, I like this list.
Yes. Let's start at number 12, though. We'll roll from number 12 and move our way up. How you think about that?
Let's do it.
If you notice any teams not in there, just tell me. Number 12 is I got the Clemson Tigers in that number 12. Believe it or not, they only 2 losses. I think they it's tough to put 2 teams in there because they might sort themselves out when they play if Clemson and Miami play in the ACC championships. That's still But right now, that's where I think they fit. Number 12, number 11. Here's a surprise: South Carolina.
South Carolina can beat anybody. They can beat anybody. They're ferocious. 3
losses in a quarterback who is becoming a problem.
Yeah.
Their quarterback's becoming a problem. Their defense is, like we say, very, very salty. And a lot of havoc rate up front for those guys. It bears itself out in the statistics. as their defense is legit.
100%.
Number 10, the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. I hated to even put them in there. Number 9, the Penn State Nittany Lions. And that's where some of that stuff ends right there. We move on to the top 8.
Yeah.
I got Miami sliding in there at 8. I have Tennessee at number 7. So I have moved Tennessee up. I have Ole Miss at number 6. And the Ole Miss, they played their best game of the year against Georgia when they had to at home. But their whole – just the eyeball test, they've lost some games, Arkansas and Kentucky, and just some, was it Arkansas or LSU? I think it was LSU. Tennessee lost to Arkansas, right? But still, a couple games that they not good losses there, not really good losses. LSU is kind of falling apart. Then at number 5, this is another shocker for a lot of folks, but just looking at everything we mentioned, the Texas Longhorns, they are at number 5.
I'm going to say.
Good spot.
I think so too, and I think they can win a national championship. But I think they could also lose to A&M and fall out. I really do. I just they have such an inconsistency. They looked very lackluster this past week, especially this late in the season.
Yeah, I mean they won 20-10 against Arkansas. It was a close game, and it shouldn't have been. No. And Georgia exposed them for a lot of smoke and mirrors. They got some good players. I mean, they might have been better last year.
I agree.
But when Georgia showed up ready to play football, they beat the brakes off of them at home.
Yeah.
Because don't forget that was where Texas should have showed the SEC we're legit, we're real, and we're going to win a championship this year. And they did not. Georgia just had their way with them. I mean, and Georgia even made a lot of mistakes, or it could have been worse.
Yeah.
Now we move on to the top 4. Number 4, I have Ohio State at number 4, Smooch.
Yeah, Ohio State's an interesting one to me. If they ever put it together, they can win a title. They haven't put it together as far as I'm concerned. I haven't been impressed with Ohio State this year. I've said, okay, that was pretty good a lot of times. So they're an interesting – I mean, if you look at their roster – their roster's ridiculous, but they really just have not gelled in that dominant way. But, we said the same thing about Georgia this year, too. So it's a wait-and-see kind of thing with Ohio State.
It is. They could play their best football. But right now I got them based on everything I've seen. And it's still a good spot at number 4. I mean, they beat Penn State just a little – I mean, it was in a close game, but we don't believe in Penn State. Then the other best game they played was a loss to Oregon. It was a close loss. Right. But, that was still a loss. But they're still in the top 4. Really good spot for them. At number 3, I have the Georgia Bulldogs right there. They have 2 losses. The number, I guess they're not the top 2-loss team because Alabama's right ahead of them. Yeah. But Georgia, I have them right at number 3, and then Bama at number 2, and, of course, Oregon at number 1. And maybe you folks think this is home cooking, but in terms of what I've seen, strength of schedule and the ability to play the best football in the country, I've seen what I need to see to kind of put these teams right here. And you can disagree with it. It's my opinion, our opinion.
Here's where I come down, especially you're really onto something. And when you talk about Georgia and Alabama, let me say this: if both of those teams play their best game, they win a title. That's all. If every team on this list plays their best game, Georgia and Alabama are the 2 best teams. However, we haven't seen Bama do that. Bama can look amazing and then not amazing. And so I think Bama could beat Oregon. And I also think Bama could lose to South Carolina. I really believe both those things. And when it comes to Oregon, somebody's going to have to hit them in the mouth. It just hasn't happened. They had a couple of close duds early in the season, but they weren't getting slapped around.
And they definitely have been tested like some of the like Georgia or Alabama for that matter.
Right, and you can say had this many ranked teams and all that, but it's like what they say, you never know what's in a tea bag till you put it in hot water. They haven't had their back against the wall, and had to have it and then come out and gotten it this year. But, man, love Oregon. Love to see them go and do well. But
love Lanning, yep.
Love Dan Lanning, man.
You know what's funny? What the funny thing is, it seems like the committee is counting losses and trying to find the reasons to put all these teams in there that we're like, why are you putting these guys in? This part of their conference is not comparable. They shouldn't be here. And now you're not going to get good football. Wouldn't it be funny if at all this conjecture and speculation, you still get an Alabama-Georgia national championship game?
And that's a very real possibility too. That would be amazing.
Make them mad. We told you. We told you all this ridiculous stuff. That's where it's going to end up.
Yeah, and
cream rises to the top.
Right. You don't increase the chances of one of these teams winning a championship by putting them in. You didn't learn your lesson with TCU. You didn't learn it at all. You put TCU in and patted yourself on the back. And what happened? Everybody that wasn't a Georgia fan stopped watching in the second quarter of that national championship game. You put these teams in. You put Penn State in against Alabama. Just give Alabama a bye. They don't need to play that game. You're giving them a scrimmage, a practice game in the playoffs rather than putting them against, to come back to it, a South Carolina, which they are such a gritty team. They can play with anybody. I would if South Carolina goes home, which it looks like they will, if they don't make it in and I have to watch Indiana play a playoff game, I can't imagine watching a playoff game that I don't want to watch. But if Indiana's in, I can imagine it. Notre Dame as well. Sorry, teams.
Exactly. You named some teams, and I'll tell you, it's like watching a baseball game or a series where one team, their 3 through number 7 hitters are all home run hitters. They are apt to hit a home run at any point, and they're very dangerous. The SEC has those home run hitters all throughout.
Yes.
So you look at Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, Ole Miss, even Texas to an extent. But those teams all have home run hitters littered through their lineup. And these other teams have to play really close to a perfect game. They can't make mistakes. They can't turn the ball over. They have to win a certain way. And they don't have the luxury of having somebody who can just beat you and who just that has those explosive top plays that happen. And I think that's a factor that isn't talked about enough, but it does come into play once these games get to elimination games. You see what happens, and you can play a real tough game. Then you got a 60-yard play that just puts it away or something like that. So
100%.
My take.
Yeah, I agree. I think that if they approach 12 teams like they say they are, the 12-team playoff could be a great thing. But like I said last week on our show, this is just like the 4-team playoff. It's just expanded to 12 teams. There's some sort of bizarre inclusion type of thing rather than putting the best teams in. I'm sorry, it's just not. If Alabama goes out and loses this week, they're still one of the 12 best teams. They just are. But you know what they'd do if they got their third loss? They'd be right out, just like Georgia would be. Georgia loses to Georgia Tech. They're still one of the 12 best teams, but they're not going to be in that playoff, and then you're going to have a bunch of dud games. That seems to be what they're trying to get done.
It's going to be really interesting next week about this time if, let's say, Indiana loses by 2 or 3 scores to Ohio State and how they are placed there. Because that should show you where you just watching that game should show you if they fit, or if they match up, or if they deserve to be here, or if that was just all smoke and mirrors. And they played really well against really bad teams, which, you should beat bad teams, but you can still be a mediocre team yourself. But it would be a travesty for that to happen and leave a team like Tennessee out. And so I hope that doesn't happen, because as much as we make fun of Tennessee, and we're about to make fun of Tennessee a little more, but they deserve to be in this if they win out, and not especially at the expense of. Indiana doesn't deserve to be in if they lose this weekend at the expense of a team like Tennessee. So
absolutely not. And I've never thought I'd say what I'm about to say, but I hope Ohio State wins by 50 this weekend. That's the first and last time I think I'll ever say those words.
Yeah. Well, we have had some fun this week, and I think we were reveling more, Smooch, in that Georgia played so well, and that just the carryover from the game in Athens, that night game with the fireworks, and it just was just wonderful.
Magical.
What college football is all about. Yes, magic. And we're just still on those fumes right now. But Tennessee found a way to get our attention on social media. So if you would, please hit that bumper.
So delusion is a fixed false belief that doesn't change in light of conflicting evidence.
They don't know reality from their dream worlds, and they won't go outside and play.
A fixed false belief that is not grounded in reality.
Ooh. They have outdone themselves this time, Troop Brinson.
If this whole segment exists because of Tennessee, really, if you want to be truthful, over the years, and we're in episode 124, so there's been a few of them, and Tennessee has been very well represented over the last 3 years.
That's a great way of putting it.
And for good reason, because they deserve it. They earned it. They earned it every year. We tell them, you guys, If nobody will put you at the top of any kind of list, the dog show will. And so they seem to every year have to come up with reasons to feel better about a loss. That's what it comes down to, right? How do what happened in this game? It couldn't be Heupel. Heupel he's amazing. He's a savant. He's one. Yeah. Nico is the best player, quarterback, best player. Yeah.
Put some respect on his name.
He's probably going to win 2 Heisman trophies before it's all done.
Absolutely.
So it couldn't be that. So Smooch, where's the delusion coming in this week?
Well, let's see. It's not the length of the grass, or it's not the rain this year. This year it is the referees. This is the year of blaming the referees. And guys, I'm just going to tell you, spoiler alert, you're going to see, I had to cut Troop. I'm dead serious. So I pulled all the delusional tweets and Facebook posts and stuff I could find about the refs. And I called and I looked at it today. I had to edit it to get it down to 30.
Yeah.
So you're going to see, you're going to see my top 30 delusional tweets blaming the referees scrolling while we go into this. We're going to talk about why they blame the refs and things like that. But it is, Troop, I heard this said that there needs to be an investigation, that Congress may need to get involved, and the mafia may have something to do with this. And that, and that you could expect Heupel to sue because of the one-sided nature of the refereeing. And I do want to say, before we get into it, Eric Taylor at Bulldog Report gave us these great graphics here that show you exactly the calling was very even. As a matter of fact, Georgia suffered more from penalty than did, in terms of their yardage on offense, than did Tennessee. First downs were only 1 different due to penalty. You can see all that here. But just to put that to bed, it's, of course, delusion. But I believe, Troop, everything centered around, let's see, where do you want to start first? How about the fumbles that were not fumbles with Oscar Delp?
Yeah.
Oscar Delp caught a ball, obviously a fumble, not a fumble. But
well, the thing is if you slow these things down and make it look like it takes longer than you can make it look like he had possession of it, but he didn't. I mean, nobody that was unbiased disagreed that the call was made correctly, and it was an incomplete pass. But Tennessee, who scored 0 points in the second half, wanted to make this a key point that if they call a completed pass, an incomplete pass was a fumble. There was another play, of course, where they pitched it ahead to Dylan Bell, and he fumbled it. And they you could see the crowd. I think the whole crowd was confused by that play because they called a timeout after it looked like Tennessee recovered that fumble. And then the next thing they said, upon further review, is an incomplete pass. People were like, what?
That's called
an incomplete pass. It was a handoff.
Right. That's a jet. That's called a jet. So it's a forward, lateral, shovel pass, whatever you want to say. But when it's forward, it's a pass. Even if it's 6 inches, it's a pass. So it's incomplete the second it hits the ground. Now, Troop, that's an actual football rule. We're talking, that's the delusion has to do with so many Tennessee fans not even knowing how football is played. But yeah, both of those, they're not you can't make them fumbles by the rules. I know it hurts, but it's just.
And here's something else by not knowing the rules. There's lots of things we're going to talk about, but 2 things that just not knowing the rules that made them look really silly was a apparent false start by Carson Beck, where everybody's set and he moves back and then takes the snap before the play.
Right.
And what they don't realize,
they blew up everywhere.
As long as he's not on the line of scrimmage, he's a back. Right. You see backs in motion all the time. You see quarterbacks will walk off from it, the ball snap to the running back.
Yeah.
Not a penalty at all.
No, you can have one man in motion at the snap, and as long as he's not moving forward, it's completely fine.
As long as he's not on the line of scrimmage, yes.
As long as he's not on the line of scrimmage, right. And he can't. So, they do have rules against quarterbacks simulating snaps by ducking their head forward, but that's a forward movement. You can step back all you want. As a matter of fact, my team used to run a play called shift to shotgun. And so we put the guy under center, and he backpedaled backwards, and we snapped the ball while he was doing it, and he would hand an end around or something like that. But it was called shift to shotgun. Anyway, it's a completely legal play. It wasn't done on purpose, but that doesn't make it illegal. It was an accident, but it wasn't illegal. Right.
Know the rules, folks. Know the rules. Another play that they didn't seem to know the rules on, and even the coaching staff got upset, was Georgia was really starting to roll in the second half. Man, they had some momentum going. And you saw one of the linemen fake an injury and walk away from the line of scrimmage, look at the sideline, and then he goes down with a leg injury. And everybody called it out. They're like, oh, okay, we know what's going on here. They're trying to slow Georgia's momentum. And so 2 plays later, I think next play was maybe Georgia picked up a couple yards. Yeah, Nate Frazier got tackled after a 2-yard gain. And Georgia, I watched the clock. Okay, I went back and watched it. Georgia substituted with 28 seconds. They ran players on with 28 seconds on the play clock. And you get 3 seconds, fans. Here's the rules. You get 3 seconds after that to start substituting as well. Then you have to do it in a timely manner. Well, they took that whole play. So if let's say it started with 28, it could start at 25, 24 right in there. They took the whole rest of that and they run one man on. Then they decided to run another man on, and the lineman took his time. He was really milking it. I think he was going to make Georgia call a timeout, but it was already 20-something seconds past. That was not a reasonable time, and the official pulled away from the line of scrimmage.
Rightly.
They saw they were going to let Georgia snap the ball. You can't just run the whole play clock off just because one team substitutes. You got to do it in a reasonable amount of time. And they were very angry that Georgia got the credit. But first, they got picked up 5 free yards on that play.
100%. And the whole thing about that one is both coaches. So what they're doing now, they're really cracking down on the fake injuries, and they're cracking down on the trying to waste teams. So what you're trying to do when you loaf off the field after the other team has substituted is you're trying to get them to call a timeout so they don't get a delay of game penalty. You're trying to slow down their rhythm any way you can. So the referees had told them, and they'd even said, Troop, I heard this, that they'd even said, we'll give you, to make sure we're not holding to this 3-second thing, we'll give you to the count of 5 to get off the field. But this was more like 25 by the time and he was walking. He wasn't even making any effort to get off the field. The referee is not responsible for giving the offense a delay of game while you loaf off the field. Again, just absolutely delusional thing to get upset about. And it was the right call. Carson, he took a shot at Arian on that play.
Dropped it,
dropped
incomplete.
it, and incomplete. They ended up getting the 5 yards on it. But, none of these are pivotal moments in the game in the first place.
They really weren't. It wasn't like it took points off the board or gave Georgia points on any one of these plays. Tennessee still had a chance to whatever. They felt like they got a raw deal. None of that made a difference right away. You still had several more plays behind that you didn't perform. The other big play, this was kind of a big play, because Georgia was faced with like a 2nd and 24 after that. I think it was after Arian's offensive pass interference.
Yeah, this was a big
2nd and 24, and they threw like a 17-yard pass to Nitro Tuggle, and then they, got in a little scrum, and he's just hit as a helmet came off, and they called a face mask. And so it wasn't as egregious of a face mask that you could see with just a head turn.
Yeah, he didn't break his neck.
Was there a face mask involved there, Smooch?
100%. The rules clearly state if your fingers go inside the helmet, that's inside the ear hole, inside the flaps, or up inside the face mask, it's a face mask call. And to be fair to Tennessee fans, the first couple of angles they showed on the broadcast didn't show that. They showed a guy kind of looked like a front headlock, and the dude's helmet popped off. But we have an angle. You're going to see it right here. You can see brother's hands inside dude's helmet, pulling it off. That's a face mask. And you know what? It's an unfortunate face mask because it wasn't intentional at all. It sucks, but it's part of the game, and it's the correct call.
Yeah. Those things are, you see that as a referee, and it looked really bad with the helmet coming off. Maybe he didn't yank it as hard as you get yanked on some face mask, but it was enough. It was enough for the penalty.
And all it would have been, so back to our point, Troop, all it would have been is like 3rd and 8 after that. Had the penalty not happened.
3rd and 7, 3rd and 7.
3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, something like that. Right.
So, not game-changing right there. It did help Georgia. And the other plays I saw that were shown a lot, and these were always shown with still shots, some of the holdings that they wanted to call. And you would see a lineman and be engaged, and one of them to the side like he was getting by him. He was still engaged. But you can't tell anything from a still shot. If he lets him go on by, it's not a hold just because he got his hands on him. I will say I saw one hold they missed, but I guarantee you there were holds on both sides all night long that didn't get called because they don't call holding in that tackle box very often anymore unless somebody is running around the edge and they extend really obviously. They don't call a whole lot of holdings on that. But Tennessee wanted every one of the ones they went back. And, dude, I should have pulled. I got the I should have done this. But I had on 3 volunteers, they had a whole thread just pulling up all the plays that were missed. Every play, every hold.
Pull it up and send it. I'll put it in post. Yeah.
Yeah, it was just so much on there. I'm like, you guys just, and even the Tennessee fans were calling out sometimes, dude, we got beat. We scored 0 points in the second half. And don't do this. Quit making us look silly.
Yeah.
We're better than that.
They need, for some reason, they have to have this thing to blame it on other than Heupel or Nico not being the answer right now. It can't possibly be that. It must be this sinister, evil cabal of people against the Tennessee Vols. It's beautiful, guys. We thank you so much. God love them.
God love them.
They're so invested. I've got one for you.
They're so invested in they're so invested in their team, Smooch, and they haven't won anything since 1998.
Right.
That these things just eat at them, and they have to find scapegoats.
Yeah, lots of teams can't win a championship with Peyton Manning. I mean, come on, it's not your fault. Seriously.
What you got?
I got this. So I'm going to play this video real quick, Troop. You're going to hear this guy, and this is getting really specific. This was a kickoff, Troop. A kickoff. Oh, yes. And he claimed, because he had this bizarre angle on his, on the broadcast, he claimed to know that the kick goes out of bounds, rather than go through the end zone. So they should have had it Tennessee should have gotten the ball much further up. So anyway, here it is.
Okay, you want to just see some blatant cheating by the refs? Watch this ball. Nope. Did not go out in the end zone. But you said it did.
So home cooking. And the crazy thing is one of our geometry nerds who follows our show actually went back and did some smart man stuff. He makes a lot more money than we do. Yeah, he makes a lot more money than you and I do. And he did that and show us, look, the ball actually crossed where it was supposed to cross. It went through the end zone. But this guy, he was claiming home cooking because from his spot, which was in somewhere outside of Knoxville, and he's watching on television from behind and at an angle, he knows where Yeah, he knows where a kick went out of bounds, Troop.
Better than the official who is positioned right there on the side and who said, okay, if it goes over my left ear or over my head, it's in bounds. And, I think it's an innocuous play. It's not something that oh man, the fix is in.
Yeah. Can you imagine what would have had to happen? You had to have the crooked official. Right, you got this one crooked official that hates Tennessee. So he had to say, hey, guys, for this kickoff, I need to be down in the corner of the end zone. And I'm just hoping, somehow get message to them to kick the ball in my direction and make it close enough. But I, just to mess with Tennessee, am going to call it a touchback rather than an illegal procedure penalty. So just kick it. That sounds insane to say it. Yeah, that's exactly what we're seeing in this video. And I wish I could remember the dude's name. We're going to tag him in it.
It went farther. It went farther than this. I just pulled this up on Twitter from Dan Harrelson. He says he's done some research on this, Mooch. Notable road losses for Tennessee with former Alabama quarterback David Smith as the referee.
Oh, no, he did. No, he did not.
10 games. The last 10 games. Notable road losses where this one former Alabama player was a referee, David Smith. He goes back to 2015 on this. He said notable road losses, 24 at Georgia, 23 at Missouri, 22 at South Carolina, 20 at Auburn, 20 at Georgia, 17 at Kentucky, 16 at A&M, 15 at Florida. So he is, really digging into who was refereeing those games and why they lost, other than they were absolutely horrible team during those years.
Oh, my gosh. So this dude has actually gone back. Now he's trying to attach it not to just the officials, but to a specific official now. So he's got he's got a bad guy. He's got a Darth Vader to fight against now.
That's exactly right.
Oh, that is just sad. You need a girl, brother, whoever you are.
But yeah, so we've had fun with that because that's just Tennessee, and you know if they lose, whether it's against Georgia or South Carolina or whoever, they're going to have a multitude of reasons. So
one thing we know Tennessee can do, as this next graphic will show, the last 8 games, Tennessee knows how to lose to Georgia.
Oh, very proficient.
Very proficient. Prodigious, if you will, Troop Brinson.
Yep. They don't score much against that vaunted Tennessee offense, just does not do much. And I mentioned this statistic earlier, and it says that last 3 years versus Georgia, 31 offensive possessions, 4 touchdowns, and that stat was brought to you by Rusty Manziel of Dawgs HQ.
Whew.
And that's something else.
That's all you need to know. That ain't got nothing to do with David the official. I promise you that.
Nothing. Hit that DFA, close it out.
Let's get out of here. Yeah.
So delusion is a fixed false belief that doesn't change in light of conflicting evidence.
They don't know reality from their dream worlds, and they won't go outside and play.
A fixed false belief that is not grounded in reality.
Smooch, I talking about Tennessee, they still got some work to do. I mean, they got UTEP. They'll put 70 on UTEP.
Right.
And feel really good about themselves. They closed the season out in Nashville against Vandy.
Interesting.
And that could be that game could be a whole new rivalry.
The Giant Killers, we've been calling them David all year. So it'd be another David beating them, Troop.
It would be another David.
If Vanderbilt gets them. Yeah, I will tune into that game. That sounds really fun.
Yep, that'll be a Saturday game after Georgia has taken care of Georgia Tech on that Friday night.
Yes.
Can't wait. I don't know anything else to cover tonight. I think we're still riding high off of that complete victory against the Volunteers. It just feels good. Hopefully, and even so, Georgia did that, Smooch, against a quality team.
Yeah.
With just a team that's beat the heck up. I mean, Dylan Bell goes out midway in the second quarter. You're missing your left tackle. You're just piecing things together in a lot of places. You're missing really 3 of your top receivers this would have started the season if you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
You got Nitro Tuggle in there. You got Chauncey Bowens in there getting plays. Georgia was able to – they don't make excuses. They just next man up, and you saw that Saturday night.
That's exactly right. You said it perfectly. They don't make excuses. They make adjustments, and that's the difference between a team like Georgia and Tennessee. And, hey, Dawgs fans, enjoy it. That was the game we've been waiting for this season. You know, this is I have to say, I usually watch and rewatch Georgia games because it's fun. But there's been weeks this season where I've watched it because it's kind of our job, right, to know it. But the rewatches this week are kind of like the Texas game, but even better. It's just a great game to watch. Watch it. Watch what Bobo does. Watch how this defense disheartens Tennessee throughout and then just finally beats them into submission to where your quarterback's laying on the ground without the ball, which is being picked up by a true freshman for the Dawgs.
We saw in 2 games, we called for it about 4 or 5 games ago. We expect to see at some point Georgia's coaching staff step up.
Yes,
and you've seen that, especially in Austin against Texas, and then this past Saturday at home, you saw the coaches' imprints on some of these games because you had to. We talked about it in our chat group that this would be a game where, with all the injuries and all of the issues they had against Ole Miss, the coaching staff was going to really play a big role here. You'd be able to see, you'd be able to know after this game whether Georgia's coaching staff was up for the challenge. And man, Bobo with a great game, and the defensive staff was near perfect. Against a very, very good Tennessee team. I hope Tennessee makes it into the playoffs. I really hope they do.
Yeah, we do too.
There'd be a lot more fun with them in there, and they have an opportunity. Really, they could get rolling just like anybody else. They can get rolling. They've got enough pieces, I think. And it's strange to say as we wrap it up, Smooch, that the one thing I might be holding it back is Nico. He's a good quarterback, but he's just not ready for those big games where he can put the game on his shoulder just yet. He hasn't had that moment.
You know, I think back to the Twitter interchange we had with a Tennessee fan when I just said Tennessee's ifs. You always have to think of your ifs before the season, and Tennessee has an if at the quarterback position.
They were like, what?
Yeah, and they were laughing at us going, this guy actually called Nico an if. And I was like, well, he is. And now you're seeing exactly what we were talking about. Doesn't mean he's a bust.
Yeah.
It just means he's an if. And he's still an if. Now, he could put it together with that arm and those legs. He could put it together, but he hasn't yet, and it's getting really late in the season.
Yeah, and his wide receivers aren't impressive to me either. They just haven't. I mean, when you're playing Chattanooga, yeah, they look good. They look very good. Everybody looks really good. But when you're playing a team that is equal or better talent-wise throughout, like a team like Georgia, even with all the injuries,
Hyatt and Tillman aren't walking back through that door. No.
All right, Smooch, it's been fun.
Yes, sir.
We won't do a countdown to kickoff this week. We may do something Saturday afternoon, depending on how the game goes. It's my birthday Saturday, so I'm going to celebrate that a little bit.
Are you 37? Right. How old are you?
Everybody's wishing me a happy birthday. Everybody's wishing.
Yeah, 37 years old. That's right. Troop Dog. That was 15 years ago. Back in my prime.
Yeah. It didn't hurt to pee back then.
That's right. But we might be back and talk a little football after Georgia's victory on UMass, because there might be some other things to talk about depending on what happens with the other games. But all right, for Smooch Moncrief, this is Troop Brinson saying so long. We'll see you soon.
Yo, is prepared for this for 365 days. I think about them that locker room. Think about getting our opportunity. All the you went through this week to get ready for this game. Now is when you pay the price. You go out there with enthusiasm. Ain't nobody cautious, nervous about. Go out here and their ass up.
This is the Dog Show with Troop and Smooch.
Quality.
Yeah.
Pep talk.
Yes, sir.
That ought to bring them out. I'll get them running.